Good evening, everyone. Welcome for another episode in the Suffer Well podcast series. I am so honored that you all are coming in tonight for episode 7. And you are in for a treat. I cannot wait to have this conversation tonight with you all that are viewing in tonight. But before I bring up our guest speaker for tonight, I wanted to go over with you what Suffer Well really means. Suffer Well means that you're able to navigate difficult circumstances and endure hardships with grace. It means to find purpose behind adversity and challenges. It's viewing challenges as opportunities for growth. The tests, trials, and hardships is actually an invitation for developing resilience, hope for the future, refining your character, surrendering and trusting God in the process. It means to rise when life or the enemy tried its hardest to tear and break you down. It means not giving up in the process and finding your strength, your light, and your power. So thank you again for coming on tonight to viewing our next episode. Welcome, Sandra. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I love the intro and just everything Suffer Well is about, and it's right up my alley. So just happy that we're able to have this chat today.
Yes. And a little bit of a background of Sandra. She uses her platform to empower women over 35 and older to embrace their evolution, turning life transitions into opportunities for healing, self-discovery, and personal reinvention. So I met Sandra officially in 2021. She had a healing brand, and I saw it advertised on social media back in 2020, and I was getting ready for a photo shoot. And I saw this ad and I said, oh my goodness, I love that t-shirt. And it said, healing is the new sexy. So I ordered her t-shirt and I actually had her product for my photo shoot that I did back during the pandemic. And then fast forward to 2021, she reached out to me to find out a little bit about me, my journey, and what inspired me to purchase her product. So when we went talking, we realized that we had a lot of similarities on our journey when it comes to a transition season. And from just meeting her from social media, we actually turned out to be sister friends. And I just love our connection that we have developed over the last 5 years, because we're now in 2026. And she has been very supportive on my journey and just helped me to reframing my thought process when it comes to navigating different changes that happen during a transition season. So I am so grateful to be having this conversation. Like I was telling her, we're just going to have girl talk for the next hour. And if you are tuning in tonight, please feel free to jump in and be a part of the conversation wherever you may be coming from. And one thing that I want everyone to know is that community doesn't have to be locally. I'm in Maryland, Sandra's out in New York. So community can be internationally, it can be nationally. So that way we can continue wherever you are. You don't have to feel like you're walking this journey alone.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I love that. Exactly. Who would have thought that a t-shirt, right, would have done all of that, would have brought us together. One t-shirt.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. But I would like to start off because the title of our topic today, we're talking about life pivot after 35 and redefining what ambition and personal reinvention really means. So I love that you are a lawyer, right? You're a lawyer by trade, and you are exploring what mid-career redesign really means. So help us to know, like, what does that mean to be in a mid-career redesign?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm actually really in the middle of figuring that out myself. I feel like I'm on a second phase of my journey. I feel like around the time when you met, it was very much more healing, but for me, that was more identity focused because I was just like, I had gone through divorce. I wasn't satisfied. And, I spent all this money to go to law school. And then it's like, but I don't even like my career. What is going on? And so I think there was this first half of my journey that was really healing focused. And that was more just, who is Sandra? Like, if you don't have the title, you don't have this husband, you don't have, this job, whatever it is, all the achievements and the accolades, like, who is Sandra? And so I think that was kind of the first iteration of transition for me. And then as I've stepped into knowing who I am, I feel very grounded. We've talked about this, very rooted in just who Sandra is. And now that nudge of discomfort has kind of come back again. And this time it's like, it's that mismatch. It's like, I feel like this new renewed person really stepped into myself, but at the same time, I feel mismatched in my career. I kind of had an inkling that I was dissatisfied then, but that work was more so focused on just me as a person. And so this, I guess, iteration of my transition is really looking at what's next, like exploring, like, what are my skills, my value, realizing my value isn't just the fact that I'm a lawyer. That was so much of my identity. And I realized that's not my identity. Like, I am just Sandra who happens to be a lawyer. Lawyer is not my identity. And so I think mid-career redesign is now, I think it's trying to close the lag between who I've become and who I am in this season of my life, and what work looks like for me going forward, because I think those ambitions of trying to be a lawyer and other things that I did, that's just connected to a person I'm not anymore. And so mid-career redesign is just taking a more intentional look and exploring myself now in a way of, what do I want my contribution to be like to the world? And I just feel like it's so much more expansive, and being a lawyer almost feels like it's in a box. It's not going away, I don't think. I think it'll always be there in some capacity, but that's just not where I really want to focus my energy. And we're going to spend a lot of time working, right? We work most of our lives. And so I'm just really on a new mission and a new journey to kind of figure out what work looks like for me in a more contributory way and impactful way, because law just isn't satisfying anymore for me.
And I really love how you just described what that means, because oftentimes when people think about life transitions, they automatically think about transitioning careers, So like for me in 2019, I love teaching. That was my career. I've been teaching for 15 years. But then in 2019, an incident had occurred at work, and it made me like really break down in my classroom for me to really consider, like, I want to walk out today. Like, I have coworkers that have literally walked off from the job and never came back. And that was going to be me that time in 2019. But after processing it, that's when my real work started. And just like you, like, I had to find out, like, who am I? And I realized once I started doing the work with a life coach and a Christian counselor, I'm like, I'm more than just a teacher, and my passion had died. And I really didn't know who I would be outside of just saying I'm a teacher, So really learning who you are and where you are, like you said, in this new phase in your life is really so important. And I loved how you talked about like a evolved identity. So, and tonight I think we'll talk a lot about that, perhaps. Like, oftentimes, especially women that are in their 30s and older, we connect our achievements to identity. Whether as soon as you meet somebody, you at a networking event or just meeting somebody, like in general, they ask you, what do you do? Before even really knowing who you are, they want to know, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
So we go down the list of things that we do, and we misconstrue that as like our identity. So did you ever find yourself in your journey realizing that you're more than just your roles?
Yeah, I think that was part of like the healing journey, was like, it's almost feeling confined of like, there's more for me. And I think what's hard is when you say more, it sounds like you're trying to be maybe excessive, or like you're being too much. And it's like, I couldn't really define what the more was that I wanted, but I knew I wanted more. I wanted to be more. I wanted to do more, but it wasn't about like filling my plate with stuff. I think it's like, it was the layer of meaning that I felt that my life just didn't have in the way that it was set up and that I was operating. And so not being able to kind of even define what more is, but I think had to just step into who is Sandra and just understanding myself. And I think this is kind of the journey now of figuring out what does more look like? Because it's not necessarily that I want more money. I want a whole bunch of work to do. I want my plate full. It's this, I think, more is really wrapped into some aspect of meaning, but I'm trying to define, in real time, like what that now looks like, especially as it comes to work. And I think I always circle back to work a lot, is because we spend like a third of our lives working at the end of the day. And so while I'm not like, I'm not, so it's about my career. It's just about that. I know that part of my survival is going to depend on work, but then if I'm going to have to do that anyways, that work also needs to be meaning. And so it's like trying to figure out how does survival and meaning coexist, because we clearly live in a crazy economy. Things are all over the place. And so trying to figure that out is a lot. It's easier said than done. Like I could articulate it, but actually, I'm 44 now. I have a whole infrastructure I created for my life around a very linear, path that I took, and everything's built off of like me being a lawyer. It's what supports me. It's what pays my bills, all of that. And so when I'm now looking at like this version of myself I am and feeling very rooted, and I know fundamentally like my work needs to look different, that transition is not, I'm not 20. I can't just take all this crazy risk. And it's a bit more strategy I'm having to like really think about, like, what is this really going to look like? And so it's so when I say redesign, it really is that. Like, it's not just me dreaming of like what cool things could I do and just try. It's like there's real risk and things at stake, because I'm connected to a lot more. I've built an entire life. Like I said, I'm not 20 years old. So I think it's a very different type of transition, especially when work has to be there, because there's a financial aspect that I don't even think like really gets talked about, that's directly related to like this meaning that I also need in my work. Because I'm not somebody who could I realize just the money doesn't matter to me. I've done that, right? I've done all the things. I've made the money. I've had plenty of titles to impress people and have my resume on paper. Like, it's like, wow, you've done all of this. But when it's devoid of the meaning, like, that's problematic. And the fact that I have to work, it's like something's got to come together for me. And so it's more about, it's an alignment that I'm seeking. And I need fundamentally, as a person and something that I value, my survival and my meaning, like, they have to be able to coexist. And so that is what I feel like redesign in my world is looking like, but there's no map for that. I can't just go pick up a textbook or, download a digital guide from online, click the link in the bio, and like, nobody's going to take me through that. So it's really something I'm having to do, this another level of like deep work. It looks very different, I think, from the healing work, but it's equally intense and involved in just really trying to define what that looks like and like strategically try to put it in place. Because I'm not 20, and the level of risk I probably was able to take in my 20s looks very different than somebody who's in their 40s. And again, my life is built on an infrastructure. I can't just burn it down.
Absolutely. And I love how you just mentioned that, like, it has to coexist when it comes to survival and meaning, because I think like when you're in your 20s, including myself, it's like you reach a certain level of accomplishment. You want to impress your supervisors. You want to make sure that you're doing well. But then I felt like I was doing things out of performance based only, and a lot of my insecurities started to grow, because it's like, here I am. I know I'm a great educator, but yet my evaluation doesn't measure that. And I'm like, what? Are you trying to say that I can't perform because of your evaluation of me, and somebody had like a bad day in my class and you observed that? So it's like, I don't need to perform in order to justify like meaning that I'm doing meaningful work, So I definitely loved how you mentioned that, like, it has to coexist, even for myself, because just entering into my 40s, I'm like, things that I may have done when I was younger also is like, you have to be intentional with the things that you do. We have more responsibilities in our 40s versus in our 20s, so still being a risk taker, but thinking it through. And that's why it's like, I love you, because I'm like, should I do this right now? Should I just have to do this? So like, having somebody like you that I could talk to help outweigh the pros and the cons.
And I think
you really need to do that.
And I think, like you kind of mentioned, like, you're performing. And I think that's also the thing, like, when you're kind of very grounded in you no longer give other people the ability to kind of determine what are the metrics that you're going to be, your success is going to be judged on, right? And so success to me, whereas like I can be, you know, a lawyer working for a company and they've got what they feel is a success, right? But like what makes Sandra successful and how I define what makes my life successful, those metrics look very different for me now. And so I'm not performing anymore for somebody else's metrics of success. And so
Mhm.
it really is like a complete redefinition, because if I were to not focus on kind of redesign and just keep my head down and stay at it, it's like I'm forever going to be locked into this performance of somebody else's determination of how high I can go, whether I'm doing a good job, because their arbitrary rules of what makes that. And it's just like, you just get to a point that when you're kind of rooted in you, you're no longer willing to like outsource that to other people to determine. And so I don't really feel like it's an option. It's kind of a necessity for me to figure
Mm.
this out in my work life, because that's just something that is it's now incongruent with like my values. Like that wouldn't even match the Sandra of today does not allow like that type of authority over me. And
Mhm.
so it's really just taking that back for myself and trying to do the work to right size that for myself. Otherwise, it's like it's not going to work.
Right, it's not. And one thing what I'm learning about life is that, like, especially when you're in a transition season, you are in a space that feels very uncertain. It feels very unknown because you are entering into a space that is new to you, it's unfamiliar. So, like you had mentioned earlier, you didn't have a map, you didn't have a roadmap to do this. So, as you continue to grow, heal, and evolve and stay grounded, it becomes, you know, a little bit more clearer for you. And the question that I want to ask next is, I don't like to call it midlife crisis. I know oftentimes you may hear that, you know, when people are in their 40s or approaching their 40s, they're in a midlife crisis.
Mhm.
But I want to rephrase it to a midlife reset or a midlife turning point. So if you feel compelled to share, what was something in your life that caused you to want to change paths, whether personally or professionally?
Yeah, I think I kind of again, I kind of think of it in two parts,
Mhm.
because and I think you kind of spoke to this earlier. I feel like change usually comes because there's some like force that's like pushing us. Like you mentioned, you were so
Mhm.
frustrated, you were like ready to walk out on the job, like right then and there, and that kind of pushed it is be like, okay, something needs to change. And so I think phase one of Sandra, so we're kind of back to kind of the healing and identity. That was when I got divorced, because I think with that it was built my life up a certain way, achieved all the things. And I
Mhm.
think divorce was very pivotal for me, because it was like I had to rethink again, who is Sandra? What does she want? I'm going back to this state of it was almost disorientation, because you've done
Mhm.
all of the things, you reach this point. And so that was very it shook my life in a way that I didn't expect. And so that was, I guess, the first inflection point. And
Mhm.
then I would say the second need for a reset was it was actually last year, which kind of made me even more dialed in on this aspect of redesign of my career. Was I did have a situation practicing law, working for a client, and it was the worst experience ever. Like, and
Mm.
it was just literally one of those, I'm about to walk out of here. They better come and they're gonna have to come and get me if they
Yeah.
come get me. Like it was just ridiculous. And so it was like, I can't keep doing this. And I think I don't know, I think it just I needed that extra push. I think I had created a situation for myself in my career that was flexible, but and it was buying me time, but I still hadn't quite figured out what I was going to do. And I think that just expired. Like it ran out. And the situation that I found myself in was like, you can't keep operating like this. I felt good in
Mm.
who I was, but there was this mismatch of this lag time. Like you're still not doing the work you want to do. So you need to get more focused in that. And so I think for me, it's been a series of like unexpected life events, I would say, have been the triggers that made me kind of, I guess, gave me the nudge. Because otherwise, I think we could be very comfortable
Yes.
and just not change, or, you know, we'll just get life is happening. And so you just do all the things. And I don't know, it kind of gets swept under the rug. But I think, you know, when I wasn't, my relationship wasn't, going how I had hoped it to be. And then your career just isn't going how you hoped it to be. And I had two very distinct events. Like divorce is obviously like a huge life change.
Yeah.
And then most recently, just with work, it was like, here we go again. And it was almost like a reoccurring thing. And this was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so I think both of those moments, while independent in both, time frames in my life, kind of catapulted me into, you've got to fix this.
Yeah. And I love that you are so transparent with sharing. And I love that, because when I did my first season, one of the episodes, I said that some things that we go through, it's like divine interruption, because we wouldn't move to make the change if God didn't come in and say, hey, I'm going to interrupt this because you're already feeling disconnected in your situation, whether it's personal or professional, and you're not going to move unless something happens, whether it's unexpected, to get us to think about the situation and how can we move forward and change directions. Because change is not, it feels bad. It feels uncomfortable.
Nobody's volunteering for it.
It's very uncomfortable, especially when we talked about offline, is that when I was in my beginning stage of my transition season, I really feel like it started in 2019 for me. It's not that I didn't have friends or a community. I just didn't have anybody in my inner circle that could relate to the season that I was in at that time, right? So it felt so lonely, because it's like I have these experiences, but I don't really know how to explain, because I'm just like, I don't know why I feel this way, why I feel disconnected. And I was trying to figure it out all on my own. And now I'm just realizing that, like, you don't have to figure it out on your own. You don't have to walk the journey alone once you have, tools that can help. Yeah. So having this platform, having your platform to talk about your experiences, helps other women that may be in the beginning phases of their journey, whether it's a healing journey or a transition journey. And that's one thing I love about how we were able to connect, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So one thing that I want to talk about is that, as you had mentioned, navigating life transitions, sometimes it's unexpected, sometimes it is expected, but we never really know how we're going to handle it, especially in the very beginning. So my question is, we're dealing with a lot of heavy emotions. How do you manage your emotions? Like, what are some grounding techniques or resting self-care techniques that you do to just help you to pause and to really reset?
Yeah. One thing for me is writing. I call it just stream of conscious writing. Like some people do like journal prompts and things like that. And I never really gotten into that, so to speak. But I had read this book called The Artist Way, and there is this thing called morning pages, and it's literally just stream of conscious writing. You get up in the morning and you kind of just write. And that's probably my number one thing, because it just allows me to get whatever is my mind is talking about on the page. So there's this isn't meant to be pretty neat. It's like literally probably the messiest draft of anything you will ever write. But it really just lets me put my thoughts on paper and just see what I'm processing. And it could be literally so all over the place, but it's just so therapeutic to just get it all out, because sometimes it's like, it's not even that we need somebody to talk to. It's that there's so much going on in your mind, right? You're just processing. And I just think that there's an importance. If you don't get that stuff out, it's data, like it's something to play with. It's information to look at. And so for me, it's like being able to just get it out. It doesn't matter, because when I go back and I read it, it's like, dang, like I could see what I was going through, just what I was thinking about. And then I could kind of start being curious and digging into that, versus it just staying in my head and feeling like I have nobody to talk to, so to speak. And so that has been probably the most therapeutic exercise. And I do that pretty much like clockwork every morning. Like it's just the first thing. And there's no time limit. Like you can do that for as long as, until I just run out of something to say on the page, or my brain's kind of just exhausted with anything. But it might, maybe like 30, 45 minutes max might be like the most time that takes me. But I would say that's the biggest thing. I am a movement person. I love strength training and performance training. And so for me, exercise, because again, I feel like it's just the aspect of, it's me versus me. I get to go to the gym. It's very meditative for me. I love hip hop, R&B, old school. Like
Mhm.
it's me, my music, a cute little gym fit. So it's like the processing while I'm working and pushing myself. That's been very helpful for me to just manage emotionally, think freely and clearly without being bombarded by like all the noise.
Yes.
Um, and then I would say listening. I'm very big on content consumption, but not in the way I think like the masses consume content. I'm very intentional with the way I consume content. And so for me, initially it started with just a lot of sermons, and just getting context. I think getting perspective, and like you mentioned, like community isn't necessarily about having to be in proximity to people. And I
Yes.
just find that sermons infuse me with a perspective, and then that kind of trickle down into, I'm a big podcaster and audiobook, so just listening to conversations and content that can give me context and perspective, because sometimes it's just a matter of like hearing somebody, again, like these conversations, hearing somebody articulate something in a way that it's like, if it hits you, it's going to hit you. Like I think you had shared, you shared with me a sermon from Sarah Jakes Roberts recently. And it was
Mhm,
like, I was
mhm.
just like so thankful, because you just never know. And so being very conscious in my consumption of content, from audio
Mhm.
to sermons to just conversations and podcasts, have been really helpful in helping me process. Because I think emotionally, it's more about how you're thinking about something. And like, I might not be thinking about something in the best way just because it happened and now I'm in my feelings, but then a
Mhm.
sermon might give me a different way to look at it. Or that conversation, I hear somebody talked about something, it's like, that's actually kind of interesting. And so I think that's kind of been my way to um, stay a bit more grounded, by having context outside of always being in my own head.
Yes, I just loved everything you just shared. And for those that's watching, tuning in right now, please take some notes, because these are excellent techniques to help you. Because even for myself, those same techniques definitely help me to process when life starts to feel really like overwhelming, and just using it on a regular basis, not just like one time and then, ooh, I'm good, I'm healed, I don't need to use it anymore. So it's about going into your bag, whether physically in your bag or just like um, what's the word I'm looking for? Metaphorically, into your bag of like tools, what you can grab out when you need it and make it accessible for you. Because definitely, last week we talked about, what do you do also what does self-love look like when you're
Mm-hmm.
on a journey? And as soon as we wake up, oftentimes, we're looking at our phone, we're looking at content, and just we're on the go mentally before we even step out of the bed,
Yeah.
so definitely making that time for you first thing in the morning. And yes, and movement, anything that just helps you to just help you to stay grounded. Yes.
And we've talked about this before, like so much is therapy. I think like we think about like what kind of helps us manage our emotions. The first thing is usually like life coaching or therapy, right? That's like the two
Right.
main things that
Mm-hmm.
people go to. But it was interesting. The other day I was even making a list, like what all is like therapy for me. Music is therapy. If you just think about like anything art related, I feel like is therapy. But like music is therapy, exercise is therapy, reading is therapy, writing is therapy, talking to a good friend, my sister friend Miata, that's therapy. It's like, so these conversations I can listen to on YouTube, like so much it's all about perspective. I feel like emotions is just finding a way to unscramble it, right? It's like making sense of what it is that you're feeling so that you could do something with it, right? That's kind of the whole point. Working through your emotions is
Yeah.
understanding it so that you could transmute that into something like positive, more beneficial, versus just being in your feelings and just being upset all the time. And so it's like, I think just looking at what all can really be therapy. There's therapy literally like everywhere around us. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just, traditional therapy, traditional life coaching. My feet in the grass is therapy. Like, so sitting like in the hammock in the park is therapy. Walking, long walks is therapy. So it's like anything I think that allows your mind to make space. Because I think when you make space, you're able to then process. It's when you don't have time to process and there's no space, you're in your emotions. And so I think that's why, you got to grab your moments of what are just the moments in my life that I could just make this space to not be bombarded by the noise. Because if you don't have the space, the emotions are going to actually, I feel like they're going to eat you alive. And so you have to just be able to be a better steward of how you actually manage that.
Yes, absolutely. And I just love those different examples of you gave for therapy because it is very therapeutic, you know? And when people are on a journey, they automatically assume, oh, you need to go to like a actual clinical therapist. And to
Yeah.
be honest, on my journey, I haven't gone to a therapy. You know, I did speak to a therapist, but I just didn't connect with that therapist,
Yeah.
you know? And then I was doing research and I realized I don't need therapy. And we even talked about that a few years ago, like therapy won't heal you because you have to do the work,
Work.
you know? And just like in that sermon that we had listened to the other day, change doesn't happen with you getting, you know, a new job. It doesn't change by going on vacation. It doesn't change with a new wardrobe. I mean, you look cute though. You're gonna feel good by going on
Yeah.
vacation, getting a new wardrobe, getting your hair done. But that's not change. Like, how do we change internally? That's the
Yeah.
biggest change, and that starts with your mindset,
Your mind. Yeah.
right? It starts with your mindset and doing the activities that you just shared and the techniques and being intentional about it is how we continue with the change, right? And lately I have been praying on, does this activity or people fit the life that I've been praying for? Because
Yeah.
oftentimes we do see the end result, but we just don't know how we're going to get there, you know? So it's just like, okay, the steps in between, it's like, what do we need to do to get there, you know? And it's just like
Mm-hmm.
listening to our internal, listening to our spirit, and just letting that be our guide, as well as, you know, tuning into things. Because I feel like when we're quieting our external and internal, like you mentioned, like as far as when it comes to content, like being intentional as far as like what you're listening to. And you mentioned earlier that you're in the second phase of your journey. The beginning phase was your healing. So a question that I want to ask you is there, what advice would you give your younger self just starting her healing journey 7, 8 years ago? What advice would you give her now?
I think I'd probably say to pay attention to how you feel. I think one of the biggest lessons for me was I care more about how my life feels than how it looks. And whenever I tap into the feeling, just being curious about that and being willing to explore it. Because if you're feeling some kind of way, it's kind of second nature. We just sweep it under the rug, keep doing whatever you're doing, and we don't take the time to kind of tap into that. And so I think just that's kind of the main thing is just pay attention more to how you feel about things than like what things look like on the outside. Cause I think that kind of reconciles with the performative nature. All of us, we kind of hit the ground
Mm-hmm.
running. We're chasing these dreams and it's all about, achieving, performing and, meeting other people's, definitions of success. But, when it started to not feel good, I wish I had just taken action sooner because I feel like my inner self was already telling me and nudging me that like, something about this isn't right, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
when you don't really have guidance on like, well, what is this feeling anyways? Because nobody prepared me for this. I thought if I just followed the script, like we were good to go. I was good money. Like there's nothing extra to do. But then it's like these feelings start creeping up, and it's like this is weird. I wasn't supposed to be feeling some kind of way about this, or this wasn't in the script. Like
Yeah.
nobody put this in here. Like where was this? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think just paying attention to your feelings and exploring it, being curious
Mm-hmm.
and just understanding and unpacking like what that is. Cause I think we'll just sweep it under the rug otherwise until we're literally like having a whole breakdown. Right. I think for me, it was like until my world came crashing down in a series of events, like even just a little bit more backstory, like the divorce was kind of the event, right, that sat me down. And so I had to kind of, well, it's like, well, you're divorced, you're by yourself, like, but
Yeah.
all of the things had already been in motion. There was some reconciliation with my dad had passed and just that relationship. There was just career stuff I hadn't addressed. I just kind of kept trying to beat it, go at it. But it's like, but you're not happy with this. Why are you still like pursuing something that's you're not happy with? And my relationship had already been in turmoil, but until I was kind of in the, well, dang,
Mm-hmm.
you're now getting a divorce. And then there were these other things around that too. It's like I had to just stop and feel all of it and like start getting curious about it. Cause it's like I had to figure it out. I couldn't just keep doing work and just living life as if everything was okay. Cause it was almost like micro stresses the entire time had been happening, but I never paused to just address anything. And so then it's now this big, it felt like a bomb. And so I think that's where we even get maybe this midlife crisis idea. It's like, it feels like it, because it's like, what is happening? My identity, like, you don't really know what it is, because it's kind of a culmination of, it's really just one thing. It's usually a compounding series of things. We just never took the time to, when it was nudging us and we were feeling it, we were kind of like, I'll get to it when I get to it. It's kind of just second nature. We just blaze right past it. And so, I tell little me to, girl, you need to pay attention to those feelings and get curious about them, because it is not a game, and you do not want to be, in crisis mode. I think if we learn more to kind of honor those nudges when we're having these discomforts, and that it's not bad, it's just information, it's just data, like something's going on with me and I need to kind of figure it out, not like, oh my God, I don't want to feel like this, go away, no, like, let me try to make this go away by any means possible. I think that's how we naturally, human nature, that's how we try to address stuff. But I think it's more like leaning into it versus like trying to just make the feeling go away, and seeing it more as like, it's a utility. Like, how can I use this? What is this telling me? And like, go kind of run towards it in that way, versus like trying to like soothe it and make it go away. So, I mean, that's why you get people with addiction, or, being promiscuous. So you just start doing all this crazy stuff because life doesn't feel a certain way. And so everybody wants to numb the pain, so to speak. So it's like, don't numb the pain, like question the emotion, like, think about it. Like, what is it telling you? How could you use this as like information, and go on an excavation and look at it like an adventure, I guess. So
I just love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's like, we really do need to just be able to sit still, or to really just sit there and process and unpack, as you had mentioned, we just want to bypass it and just move on without even sitting there, because that's a loss. That's, so many different emotions that we want to numb the pain. We want to numb the experience and just say, oh, okay, that's all right. And a poem that I had did at an open mic where you came to see me at, a line in that poem I had mentioned as far as like, choosing me, like, it's okay to walk away from things, getting that nudge, as you had mentioned, walk away from things that doesn't fit well with me, because the younger version of me would have just turned the left cheek and would have just stayed in a situation, a relationship that was not serving me, So being able to realize when something is not right, instead of thinking based off of, our emotions, because naturally we're going to think about our emotions, but we can't let our emotions continue to lead. We can't let our emotions, take control to the point that we're not able to logically think about the situation and think it through. So I 100% agree. And I think that's how I knew that I was also with you, no longer in that phase of that healing phase, like I'm in that season now where it's like, okay, I'm in a season of peace. And when you had mentioned it, because there are different levels in healing, because once you reach one area in your life, there's going to be another area that you may have to uncover and continue to work on. But I don't see it as a crisis anymore. Like how you had mentioned it, I see it more as like, okay, what do I need to continue to work on to become a better version of me, where God sees me, because he sees the future. I'm just living in the present,
Yeah. And it's not all, and I think it's not all healing. I think what kind of has gotten misunderstood is like, healing is forever. Actually, no, it's not. Like, a healing is something that you might have, it ebbs and flows. You might have a season where there's things you do need to heal. There's some real reconciliation. You need to emotionally get in there and get some stuff worked out. I don't think I'm in a healing season right now. I think I'm just in transition and having to make changes and decisions that look very different, because now that I do have a healed mind, a healed understanding of my identity, and things are now like moving in the right direction for Sandra as a person, I don't look at this as this is a continuation of a healing journey. Like, I think that journey did stop, and I don't feel like currently I'm healing from anything. I do feel like you want healed. Sure. Do I feel like healing could come up again? Yeah. Life might throw me some more lemons, and I got to deal with it. And it might be truly emotional and have me in a space that there's some work I need to do. But I think it's just like also reframing that as like, you're not in this perpetual state of healing. Healing is not ongoing and forever. I just don't buy into that. And I think that's kind of like what the wellness space has made it. I think it's recognizing like when you've actually done the work, and you're now out of that space. And I think there's just ways that you see in how you react to things, because they'll revisit you again and you'll see how you respond. And I think those are always our opportunities to see, like, have I really grown past this and moved on? And then you're just going to get another set of circumstances and challenges that life is going to give you, and it's going to keep happening. But that doesn't mean every time you hit a roadblock or an obstacle. I'm not hitting an emotional thing right now. I'm hitting more an alignment thing. Like my life is mismatched because I don't want the same things as Sandra at 20 and 30. And so I'm not healing who I am. I'm trying to right size the work that I do because it doesn't make sense for the version I am now. And so I've outgrown something, and there's an aspect of my life that hasn't caught up with that growth. And that's just a reality that I didn't expect through my healing journey, because you think I'm healed or like I feel great. And now it's like, you just continue on. That was the reality check that I had. Like, I didn't just pick up and now everything is all good. I realized, dang, you get to the mountaintop and you got to go right back down to the bottom and start over again in a different new way. And so that to me is the phase, and that's not called healing back down here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just in another phase, and I would say that it's more of just it's more of a recalibration than anything, than a healing. It's now I've got to close this gap between an infrastructure that I built for a version of me that doesn't exist. And so that's a different set of challenges. And again, once again, lo and behold, there's no roadmap for that either. You know, just like nobody walked me through my healing journey. You know, I kind of had to build my own support system and process for that, and how I went about doing that. I'm finding myself in a new build of how do I resolve this for myself, and what am I learning about myself through noticing what the new challenge is, not naming it into something that it's not. Like I'm healing again. Like, actually I'm not. Like, that's not what it is. It's trying to come up with the language for myself so that I can articulate it and understand it, and what that now looks like. And so it's just another aspect of growth. And I think it's just maybe we call growth, so it's an aspect of growth, and maybe that we just need better names for the periods within our growth. But I think for me, it's like, until I found myself in it, there just isn't I just feel like there isn't language for it. And so I'm kind of, I'm very big on personal development and self-work. That's just a lifelong process and thing I'm very invested in. And so that's something I'm always trying to unpack for myself, is like, what really is this? Like, I'm always curious about what is this? Like, even with healing, I didn't know I was on a healing journey. I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, you want to figure out your identity? Like, no. Right. But then all of a sudden, God really put healing is the new sexy in my spirit. That was not, it may sound cute, or like I was just so witty and came up with something. Absolutely not. I didn't know what healing even was. Like, that, it became a thing apparently. But I was like, before healing became a thing on the internet, like, I was already in that space trying to figure out what is happening to me. And then God put that healing is the new sexy on my spirit. And it was like, okay, I guess I'm healing. I need to heal. Like, it was me figuring literally it out in real time. And I feel like God gave me some language. And I think it was only sexy because it was like, girl, you're going to be empowered when you do this. You're not going to be on the ground wailing and crying and flailing. Like, you're going to get through this thing. And so it's just, I think, just finding the language for what is this new season right now. I think it feels more like a recalibration and trying to find some semblance of like alignment for myself, and the way my life kind of operates and is sustained, because I literally have outgrown the whole infrastructure that I spent my life, my first part of my life building. And I'm in this second phase now trying to figure it out. And nobody gives you a roadmap for that. Because we should have had it figured out by now.
Right. In our 40s, we should have had it figured out.
Had it figured out. And I'm just like, oh boy, I could probably write a whole book on this stuff, because it's like what you just learn as you go. But I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because it's real. Like, it's tangible. It's real. I feel like I could articulate it because I'm fascinated by our human experience. It's interesting.
Hmm. And I loved how you explained everything, to a T. I can't even like say how much I appreciate you just mentioned that because, we were already doing the healing before it became like a thing on social media, because it's like when you're no longer in that phase, it is ongoing. Like somebody had mentioned in last episode, it's like a maintenance of it,
Mhm.
but even if you go right back down here, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you're starting mentally back down.
Oh,
It's
no.
just about
You're so
you're
much
feeling
further
mismatch.
ahead. Because you're
Yeah.
growing. Because once you've grown and once you've really learned, but I feel like that's why I don't. You know me. I'm so unbothered. Like I'm like what?
Yeah.
Like there is really no such thing as a problem in my world because I'm like I feel like I've mastered the art at least for myself of how to look at things and I've really gained a level of control over like my mindset and how I think and my thinking has just expanded too. I think that's been the blessing of the healing, right? And getting to that place. It's like it's just really expanded my mind in a way that I'm just so thankful for because I don't ever really feel like I'm at just this, oh my God, woe is me. I can't I know I have this confidence and conviction, like, girl, you gonna figure this out. Like, what are you over here tripping
Mhm.
on? Like, that's just my demeanor now. And so I'm just so happy for that resilience. And yeah, it's just always trying to build on that. So I think like that's why with the writing, with, the listening to the podcast, it's like anything that you can do, you're almost like rewiring yourself in a sense
Yes.
because it's giving you perspective. And the more perspective you have, I think the more that your brain just starts being more able to start adjusting to these scenarios because life's gonna keep giving us crazy stuff. Like that
Yes.
is like that's the constant. Like that's the one thing. Like I can't stop the foolishness life is going to send my way. So if I
Mhm.
just get okay with that, just give me a catcher's mitt. Like I'm catching it. Like there's no
Yeah.
like I'm good. Like I'm going to be prepared for it. And so I'm no
Mhm.
longer worried about like what if this happens or what if that happens? Like it's probably going to happen. But like am I going to just crumble to the ground like if it does or am I going to be able to like process my way through it and like
Mhm.
unpack it and understand it in a way that I could use it to do something better with it? And just
Exactly.
crash out, like I'm not going to be on the internet crashing out
Right.
over what just happened. Like it's not
Mhm.
happening.
Exactly. And I just loved how you mentioned that because we are going to be hit with turns and twists and hardships. But for God to know if we really, pass quote unquote the test is how do we respond and react to that situation? Like you said, am I going
Yes.
to cash out on the internet? Am I going to fall out and, you know, do things that maybe the younger version would have done? Because I think I was even talking to you about a situation, and you're like, Miata, we're not going to have this pretty party today. Like, we're not. And I love that because I was
I
like,
will shut it down.
we're
Shut it
not.
down. I
That is
think
all the way down.
my
Okay.
level of unbothered, I think needs to be studied at this point because
Yeah.
it's like I'm good. God's got me. Like my mind has been corrected and right sized. Like I'm good. I'm more like bring it. Like at the end of the day,
Yes.
like that's kind of my new attitude. And so it's definitely just empowering to be able to feel that I'm operating from that space versus
Mhm.
this, kind of victim. Like oh my gosh, these emotions are controlling me. Life and everything external is got me all in a tizzy and I'm losing my mind and I'm stressed and I'm anxious. Like, I don't know. I'm just very protective of like the growth, even. And I think like you have to be like, once you've noticed, like you've found that sweet spot, it's like I protect that at all costs because it's like I'm
Mhm.
not going back. I'm not going back.
You're not.
I
Yeah.
refuse.
Yeah. Ain't no way we're going back to old mindset thinking and
No.
just certain things that we probably would have done. Like I said earlier, like letting your emotions lead,
Yeah.
and this is like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because like
We
you
will
said,
shut
the
that down.
situation that we go through, even in the bio and the
Yeah.
background that I mentioned as far as suffer well, how can we turn these challenges into opportunities for growth?
Yeah.
Because so often, like the process, we're thinking so much of like long term, how am I going to get out this situation? But starting small, because small steps and celebrating that is just as important as those big accomplishments. Because looking at where I was 7, 8 years ago, I'm like in awe. And a little bit last week, like I told you, we were talking about self love journey, and I had written a poem when I was 30. I'm now 40, and it's entitled Broken Lost Girl. So I was talking about being broken as a girl, even though like having insecurities, but nobody would have known it when I was a teenager because like I had a lot of friends, a lot of cousins. I was very active in my school community, church community. But then my insecurities really start to play when I became an adult, you know, because like I had a checklist and I was trying to meet everything on my checklist because when I was younger and from teenage years all the way to college, I had my checklist and everything's happening the way that I said, but like the roadblocks, it just wasn't happening. So my insecurity started to grow and my emotions started to grow. So I wrote a poem when I was in the beginning of my healing journey. And then something told me to read over it. And I kid you not, I started crying because that person was so sad. You know, like I was crying for her, you
But
know,
writing does that. You could go and you were mentioning you're going back to your writing and how it's like, whoa, this was what was going
that's
on.
the space I was in. And I'm like, I need to rewrite it from a more healed version, from a more elevated mindset, because I had a very like defeated mindset. Life was like really at that time beating me up and I just didn't know where to turn. And that was the language. And I'm like, I'm not in that space anymore. You know, at 40, I'm in a new chapter and I'm really exploring what identity looks like now for me in my 40s and not, you know, based off of societal expectations when it comes to identity. Right.
Exactly.
So I love that, you know, the healing, because it felt like punishment. Everything that we go through, hardships, it's not supposed to be like roses, a garden, you know? When I think about a garden, I think about like, what are some things that we have to release so that way we can, the beautiful thing that we have on the outside, our makeup, but it's like, okay, even though with makeup and having on a cute outfit, that's good. But like internally, how can we really take care of ourselves and water ourselves internally? So that way we can look good on the inside and outside. Because like, I know you can probably relate. You probably met people and they're like, oh, wow, they're attractive on the outside, but like, they're very ugly personality wise, very ugly, you know? So it's like, how can I be both beautiful inside and out? And that's been something that I'm like, okay, that's the space that I'm in now.
Yeah.
And the question that I want to lead into is, offline, we had talked about, you know, how the journey, like it allows us to gain clarity. And I thought I was in stage 7-8 years ago of being built, like building a brand and stuff like that. And I was kind of excited, but then overwhelmed, even to the point that I met you in 2021, where I wrote a book, a self-help book. And then people are excited for you. They're like, okay, what's next? What's next? What ideas are you doing next? So I started a writing workshop. And I remember you came onto it, but I immediately stopped. Why? Because I'm looking at the numbers. I'm looking at the low numbers and I'm letting that control like how I feel, you know, and I immediately stopped. And God even recently is telling me to like revisit that. But I'm learning now, especially even doing this project, that you have to constantly reevaluate and figure out what your why is, because it's not about external satisfaction or validation. You know, it's about what did God put in us. And now it's like I have like this spiritual hunger that no matter what the numbers look like, he gave us these ideas for a reason and it will make impact. And we feel uncomfortable in our personal, professional life because we know there is something greater. And just like the sermon we listen to, sometimes that takes time and we can't rush what God is birthing and building in us. Okay. So I know that was a whole lot. And I didn't ask the question yet, but the question is, to gain clarity, what were some things that you had to release on your journey, or is that like ongoing? Do you still have to like release anything, whether that be habits or lifestyles, to gain the clarity that you need?
Yeah, I think it's ongoing for me because again, I'm very just in tune with how I feel. So when things just feel, and I think I might have explained this to you, you mentioned working on things. Like I'll start working on things and I don't know why I'm necessarily working on it, but I get these creative sparks. But then for instance, I'd started a podcast and it was like I was feeling like I needed to like, you know, talk a bit more about my journey, so on and so forth. And then I ended on this episode, ironically, that was all about, you know, you've outgrown your career and it's not burnout. And I think now like what that project was for, I don't think that like it was because I was meant to be a podcaster. I think there was like God was trying to move me in a certain way to understand, like, you need to address this career thing that has you you're misaligned and you're still not really focusing on it. And I had actually like cold turkey just like stopped. The project just went nowhere. I did all this work, built it all up, thought it was like about to be this thing. And then it just started to feel more like it was weighing on me more so than anything. And I just kind of had to stop. And so for me, it's kind of always paying attention to like, what am I feeling? Like, even when I'm doing something that's creative and exciting, it's like, then all of a sudden I got this, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I don't think this is the direction I'm supposed to be going. It was more about what it was, me trying to speak to me and get a message to myself. Like, hey, this episode isn't even for the people. This is actually you talking to you, and you needed to express that. But until I saw it almost like looking back at me because I had put it out there, but then it got so uncomfortable to kind of even go forward. So it's like, I think for me, clarity comes with paying attention to how I'm feeling, like at all times. Like that is just paramount, because I just feel like I trust inner Sandra so much beyond like how I've ever trusted myself before, that I know that there's something nudging me. There's something to come out of whatever it is that like I'm feeling. And I really let that lead. I'm just a very in tune, intuitive person with just how I'm feeling. And I think that leads me to books that I end up picking up. And it's just crazy. And I think I might have mentioned this to you before, just in our own conversations, like things will just find me, because when I'm feeling a certain kind of way, I feel like things are lining up in my own universe to where I end up coming across them. And then for whatever reason, I end up engaging with it. And then once I do, it had something in there that I needed. And it happens to me in the most random of ways. It happened recently with you. You sent me the Sarah Jakes episode, and I've really been in the depth of this transition of like what work really looks like for me, what's impact going to look like. And that message I told you was like, it was spot on, but like I wasn't looking for it. But when I'm kind of processing in my own way internally, I'm feeling just certain things just happen to find me. And again, it's a blessing, but I just always just stay in tune with what I'm feeling, because it makes me more alert.
Yeah.
What's going on around me, so that when I receive things, I could have easily just said, I'll get to that next. Miata sent me this video. I watched it that day. I was like, girl, I'm about to watch this in like 30 minutes. Like, and I got to it. And so I don't take things lightly. I think just the fact that I'm so connected to my feelings, it heightens my awareness of everything happening around me. And I take like nothing as coincidence, because I know that sometimes the word that I need, or God is sending it through a video that a friend sends me, through a book that I found, something in my neighborhood I'm always like joking about. But I'm like, I feel like I've got a bunch of bookworms in my neighborhood, because people are always leaving out books that they just want to give away after they're done. So I have like books literally just and I love to read. So it's like, but I'll randomly find a book on the way home that I'll pick up for no reason. I wasn't looking for the book, but then some of these books that I've read, just finding them through my neighborhood, they were just what I needed. And so it's just this connection that I've been able to make for myself, is just always stay in tune with what I'm feeling, because it allows me to stay more alert to what's going on around me, because there is some type of clarity and resolution that's coming on its way to me. And if I'm alert, I'm paying attention to what's inside, and I'm alert, I'll be able to receive it. So
yes, I love that. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch this episode, because for those that's watching online, I hope you are taking notes, because I'm going to have to go back and take some notes. I'm telling you, Sandra be dropping them gems. Okay. And I just loved how you said that, because you are truly empowering me, with your words, with your nuggets of just knowledge and just wisdom that has come out of your journey. And I am so appreciative with everything that you have done and everything that you are doing, because even on my journey, because that's one thing we all want to know, like, we need clarity. I want clarity, God. I want clarity. And sometimes it doesn't just come within that month, that day. It may come a year or two or 10 years later, the clarity that you've been seeking after.
Patience.
And I think you even posted this on your page. It's like, when we're waiting in that waiting season, it's tough, because it's like we haven't received the answers yet. So are we waiting anxiously? Or are we going to wait and continue to move and go while the information or whatever we need finds us? And I love that, because I'm in that space. I feel like the last 2 years, like, let it find you and just
live.
Just
live.
live.
Yes, you have to
Yeah.
let go. It's like releasing the control, releasing the like anxiety with like
Mhm.
uncertainty and just having patience because it's like I don't put anything off. If something's not happening, all right, I'm gonna just go on with my life because again,
Mhm.
when it's meant to find me, please trust and believe like it is finding me. And
Yeah.
it's been such a like a real experience. Like this is like lived testimony that like that's how it's been working and it's been working like that for not like this past week for years because I've just been in this space of like I am tapped in, I'm locked and loaded, like there
Mhm.
we are here, like this is where we are at now. And so there's this power of just really letting the things that are meant for you that you need, whether it's advice, clarity, guidance, like it's also going to find you. We don't have to like exhaust ourselves trying to always be looking for all of the fixes and clicking and downloading, getting the bio links in the bio. It's like everybody's like selling you all this crazy stuff. And it's like you literally have probably the bulk of what you need. It's just like tapping in the right way, like having the patience and being intentional about like what you're focused on. And I think if you could just start like putting some teeth into that, like the rest just works itself out. I feel like it's more about what you really need to zone out so that you can
Mhm.
zone in. And it's just like not letting things that don't feed that like through. Like some stuff just has to stay out. Like there's like a do not enter zone sometimes. Like, no, you can't come
Yes.
through here. And so, I'm not all this like I'm protecting my peace. It's not even that. It's just kind of like being a good steward of like what's in your orbit, to your amount of presence that you allow yourself to have, a good steward of your feelings and not just like putting that to the side. And so I guess maybe that's like the theme is like just being a good steward of you and like everything that's kind of going on within you and managing, to like what's around you and how it's impacting what's like going on within you. And I think it's like finding that balance of the two, but just
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And just, in the process of working on a poem because writing for me is very therapeutic. And I loved how you mentioned earlier the different types of therapy that we can receive. And you've even shared a few playlists with me. And I'm like, yes, let me go ahead and turn this playlist
oh, the
on like on a
music head
Friday
in me
evening
will
and
come
just get
out.
into my zone. And
Yes.
like you said, just being intentional of what you allow in your space because Miata Harris now, Mia So now, she's very guarded of who she allows in her space. And I'm not just talking about people, I'm talking about just like
Everything.
everything, because I truly believe that once you continue to work on yourself, there is no going back to what you allowed in the past. There is
Yeah.
no way going back. So what I would like to say, and we're going to close out with this question is, how can we connect with you? Do you have any projects that you're currently working on, and how can we get involved to get to know you?
Yeah, no projects. I think, like I said, I'm kind of in this mid-career redesign in real time. It's evolving, but I don't really have anything particular to share on that. Just my social media handle at I am Sandy Freddy would be the best way to just stay in contact. And I love just keep the conversation going if anybody wants to reach out and as things kind of make new developments on the career front, as I try to shift. I've got some ideas, but I'm also just kind of protective of when it's ready, it will be ready. And so, yeah, no formal announcements or anything like that, but social media is where you could find me.
Yes, and please stay connected with Sandra because, like she said, that things are not built overnight. So as we continue to learn and grow, our love for self-development, personal development will continue to grow into, more to be able to be more, not really more effective, but to continue to share what we have learned on our journey to help others. Because even for myself, just like what Sandra shared earlier, there was no blueprint, there was no roadmap. But what could we do to help somebody else on their journey, when it comes to especially personal reinvention, right? Redefining what ambition and success looks like for you. It may look different when you are feeling misaligned, and just knowing that that is okay. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just time for a reset, right? It's time to reevaluate. And I think you even shared that with me. Reevaluate, just like jobs give us an evaluation, give ourselves a self-inventory. And
Your
I
whole
really
life.
did that after I got on the phone
Your
with you,
whole
okay?
life.
Like, you are my life coach, you are my therapist. Like, what? Yes, reevaluate and give yourself a self inventory of what you would like to see in your life and continue to work towards that until it becomes a manifestation. So, thank you all for tuning in tonight. I am so grateful that you all were able to watch and hopefully get some nuggets tonight that you can add into your toolbox. And join us next week for the last episode. Yes, it's the last episode in the series. And we're going to talk about the power of rest. Okay. It's important to find that pause and that rest so that way you can reset and move forward. Thank y'all. Have a good night.
Thank you.